Light.
There you go.
Oh, William Tell.
Rossini.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Sunanda Samathar Corrado, co-hosting the John Telford Detroit Show with Dr. John Telford, coming to you live at 10 o'clock every Thursday morning on Wjzz Cool TV, streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Dr. John Telford is a former Detroit Public School superintendent, a former world-class athlete, and conqueror of Olympic champions, a championship track coach, poet, newspaper columnist, longtime civil rights crusader, and the author of 6 Detroit-oriented books: The Poet Emperor of Earth, What Old Men Know, Creative Insubordination, The Will Robinson Story, The Poetic Prancings of Mad John, his explosive autobiography, A Life on the Run, and another forthcoming poetry book, Athletes, Activism, and Apple Boughs, a Detroit poetic epic. He also has a show on WCHB AM 1340, Detroit's gospel station, Saturday mornings at 9:30 and Monday evenings at 6:30. That's Saturday mornings at 9:30 and Monday evenings at 6:30. His books are available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, or just by calling The Good Doctor at 313-460-8272. That's 313-460-8272. Dr. John Telford has been called a legend and a lightning rod for controversy. He has received the Detroit City Council Spirit of Detroit Award and the Joe Louis Foundation Spirit Award and Champ Award. He was named Wayne State University's Alumnus of the Year in 2001, and a Detroit track was named for him. His email address is drjohntelford@aol.com. That's drjohntelford@aol.com. Now, without further ado, I present to you that crusading old native Detroiter, Dr. John Telford.
Thank you, Dr. Sunanda Corrado, that PhD from Columbia University, who is an anthropologist by training. Dr. Corrado has been teaching at Wayne County Community College District for over 10 years. And look at her. She looks like she's about 17 years old.
Yeah, right?
I got these two ladies who look like they're in their teens, and here they are. We got Heather Dell in the studio, too. She's going to be commenting on the program that we're doing on Parochiate later today at the Detroit Yacht Club. And, Dr. Corrado is currently a researcher for the Detroit Equity Action Lab that's housed in the WSU Law School, by the way. And she's founder and CEO of Education by Design. All right, let us just take a moment. Let us send prayers. Let us send prayer. You know, there's 651 mass shootings in the United States.
Yeah.
There were 650 until a couple of weeks ago. Now it's 651. And let us send prayers of comfort and condolences to the Oxford community and to the Oxford School District and the parents and students on the tragic loss of life and injuries suffered during the November 30th attack at Oxford High School. Let us keep them uplifted in our prayers.
To say, those students handled that situation remarkably.
Oh, they have. They did.
It broke my heart.
Well, it's a culture that's comfortable
Yeah.
with guns, Oxford. It's a very, I mean, people will get upset with me for saying this,
No,
but
it's the
facts are
truth.
facts. I mean, Oxford is pretty conservative. It's Northeast Oakland County, Oakland County in general.
Right.
Yeah.
We grew up with guns, and so guns are part of the culture.
And now it's
So
a
I
mixture
think-
of guns and privilege, right? Because
Yeah.
at the same time, we're talking about one of the top high schools in the state.
Yeah, I mean, and so I'm not suggesting that
No.
normalizing guns or having a comfort with it is a good thing, but in the case of urgency,
Yeah.
I think having a familiarity or a comfort level or understanding the
Yeah.
limitations of it maybe helped everyone keep their head about them. A lot of
Absolutely.
hunters up there too, which I know people are like, oh, hunting, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
I would never hunt unless I had to eat to hunt. But ladies, I got a couple of announcements I got to make. One of them is for me. You know, I'm doing the my next poetry reading is going to be at King High School. I'm the poet in residence for the Detroit Public Schools. My next poetry reading is going to be for the student body at King High School in Detroit on the 13th of December. So if anyone wants to come, I think that will be open. I also wanted my listeners to know, and our watchers to know, that the Downtown Monitor is still on the stands, and it has my usual Poets Corner in it. And there's a column in there called Excavations Viewed in a Museum, which has a moral to it. So get the Downtown Monitor today, if you would. It's still on the stands. You know, we last week here we had Virginia Starkey on our non-show because our engineer was otherwise distracted, and the whole show, we sat here for a whole hour broadcasting a show about Wjzz Starkey's. She's the proprietress of Wjzz Boutique, which offers a wide range of fine clothing and accessories for ladies. And you can find all sizes of women's. Oh, I think are we getting a call? We're getting a call.
So
Nope.
Wjzz Boutique
we're not getting a call
is
on-
located right next to Alger Theater.
Oh,
Can't take this call right now. I'm
And
on the air.
so she decided to move her business from the River House back into the east side, into East English Village. And she found, with all due respect, a friend at Alger's Theater kind of developing around her and starting to develop through her property. So they had to kind of renegotiate boundaries because she hadn't been there for a while.
oh.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, what's like the history about? Oh, do you have a few more announcements?
I actually do. I was
Yeah.
going to get this phone out of there so it doesn't ring again, but I just wanted to finish what I said about Wjzz Boutique. You know, you can find all sizes of women's fine apparel in Wjzz one-stop excellent customer service at Wjzz Boutique that you can't find anywhere else in Detroit anymore. And Wjzz is at 16423 East Warren. 16423 East Warren. It's right around the Alger Theater and around the corner from one of the few libraries that's left open. We only have 6 of them left open now in the whole city.
And one in Wayne County Community College District.
And also, I was over at Sinbad's the other day with Sunanda and her family, and
That's wonderful.
we took V there for her 65th birthday, and Mark Blank Sr. and Mark Blank Jr. run Sinbad's restaurant over at East Jefferson on the Detroit River in Detroit's east side. And in my view, Sinbad's is Detroit's best restaurant. So I'm putting that word
It
in
is
for
delicious.
Sinbad's, and they're not paying me to say this either. You know, they are not.
You know they'll cook your fish for you.
They will.
I think they still will. They always
Yeah.
did, and I think they still will. If you go fishing and go in there with your fresh fish,
Yeah.
they'll clean them and cook them. I mean, they'll charge you.
Oh wow.
but- Yeah, that I have. As of last year, somebody told me they were still doing it. My
I
dad
heard-
used to do that. He'd go fishing for walleye.
Yeah.
We'd come down for walleye and
Oh, that's
then take the
amazing.
fish in. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know they did stuff like that. I heard they had like the hot rocks upstairs. We were talking about that yesterday. Like some kind of hot rock way of preparing food
Yeah,
upstairs.
you cook your own food.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's antithetical to me. I'm just like, yeah, no. If I'm gonna go out and pay to eat,
Yeah.
I ain't gonna cook my own food.
Yeah, I'm not trying to.
I don't
be
cook my own
spicy.
food anyway. I
That
go to
ain't-
restaurants all the time. But anyway, and you know what? When we do this symposium later today,
Yeah.
it's going to be videotaped by Detroit Internet Protocol Television. Because Tim Moore, who was my old half-miler at Southeastern back in the early 1960s, is sending his man to videotape it, and then he's going to put it live on Detroit Internet Protocol Television. So this thing is going to be televised live at 5:30 this afternoon.
So we're talking about an event that John is hosting, Dr. Telford is hosting at the Detroit Yacht Club, 5:30 tonight. It's on Parochiate. It's also being hosted by the Highland Park Chamber of Commerce. We are all board members of the Highland Park Chamber of Commerce, and we're there to talk about the future of public education and what it means when parochial schools are finally becoming public schools. I don't know if America's seen the headlines. It's 2 years too late. But in Maine, they've handed down yet another decision that is going towards this avenue.
And that's being argued in the courts right now as we speak.
Absolutely.
The main situation, which is being argued right now on parochial aid.
So faith in state is one idea, but faith in education, a lot of people might see it as a separate discourse. So that'll be a very, very interesting, very interesting debate.
It could become somewhat contentious. You know,
yeah.
because we have a couple of preachers.
Yes, we do. We have Reverend, your good friend, Reverend
Arco C. Brooks Jr.,
Yes.
who's got the church over on Harper Avenue, Gospel Chapel of Detroit, over on Harper Avenue.
Amazing gentleman.
Oh,
and,
yeah. He was my quarter miler, too.
Wow.
I trained him in the quarter mile back at Southeastern in 1961. He was one of my better quarter milers. But we also have Keith.
Reverend Keith Graham. And
Okay.
he has ministries up in, he helps with ministries up in Flint, and he does a lot of work down in Detroit as well.
Isn't he one of your students?
He's one of my students, but that's just a word, right? I mean, he's an amazing person, and he's an amazing social and religious leader within the community. So that's what's so amazing about teaching at Wayne County Community College. You're not teaching a keg party crowd. You're teaching sheriffs. You're teaching teachers.
Oh, yeah.
You're teaching a lot of people who could teach you something back.
It's like Urban War College.
Absolutely. So Reverend Keith Graham has also brought a lot into our classroom.
Didn't you have the county executive's wife as a student, too?
Oh, yeah, Renata Evans. And you know what? She was actually a brilliant student. I mean,
She's brilliant, period.
Yeah, I didn't have to worry about giving her a grade. She took it from me. She took that A, and it was a solid A, and her ideas were original and brilliant. There's a lot to be said about her, and I hope to see her grow more and more into the scene, because she's really a very bright talent.
That's Warren Evans' wife. You know, he's been invited to this thing at 5:30 today. I don't know if he's going to show, but hopefully he will. You know, we've invited channels 2, 4, 7, the Detroit News, the Detroit Free Press, the Michigan Chronicle. I mean, all of the major media have been invited.
Yeah.
But they've been trying to keep this kind of under wraps.
Everybody's been trying to keep it under wraps.
And,
Well, it's bad it's tough on the advertising. I mean, it's tough on controversy.
That's true.
Controversy sells on one hand, but when you're selling the money to support that controversy, you don't want to bring controversy into your dollars.
Yeah,
right?
in other words, you're complicit. A lot of these folks are complicit. And I will be somewhat surprised to see them there, but since it is so contentious, they may show up. But we do have members of the alternative media there.
Yeah.
You know, we've informed the Detroit Native Sun, for which I write a column, and we've informed. Who else have we informed? We've informed Telegram News.
Yes.
We've informed the Metro Times.
Yeah.
Lee DeVito.
So as a chamber, we're not taking one side of it or another.
Well, I'm taking one side, you know, as a person, but I've stepped off the panel in order to let Dr. Vidi's appointee, she's representing him.
That's DPS will also be on the panel.
His lobbyist, Sharice Butler, is going to be on that panel. And we also have Tracy Peters, a very knowledgeable attorney, on that panel.
Yes.
So, you know, we've got some heavy hitters.
Just so I'm going to apologize and back up as a layperson here. When you say alternative media, that could be very pejorative in my mind. So what do you mean? You mean like citizen sponsored or citizen journalism?
I don't know what I mean. You tell me. You tell me your definition of alternative media.
Well, alternative media to me could be anything from Newsmax to MSNBC.
Yeah.
When I say alternative media, I guess I'm saying the media that doesn't get the support of the major media.
So not the broadcast and print network.
They tell stories that the major media neglects to touch for whatever reason.
Citizen journalism.
Yeah. So
that's
Tim Moore,
better term.
So Tim Moore is part of like the UIN network, the urban. I'm terrible.
Urban Information Network, UIN.
Yeah, which goes across 30 cities and talks about
all across the country. All
right.
across the country.
Yeah, and talks about the minority issues in cities that the headlines don't delve into. Like, for instance, the historicity of Oxford, for instance, that a lot of people aren't getting. This is a kind of context-driven journalism that, of course, local news can only provide.
So it's self-regulating, basically.
Commercial.
And you are watching the John Telford Detroit Show, coming to you live, streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Please like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe to us in other programming. And thank you for watching Wjzz Cool TV. the coolest TV station in the world. And please come out to the Detroit Yacht Club, 5:30 tonight. Parochiate, it's open to the public, and I believe we have a phone call.
We have a phone call.
And
Caller.
how do we accept it?
Caller, you are on the air on the John Telford Detroit Show.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Hello,
caller.
Coach. Ruben here.
Oh, this is Reuben Wilson, the great poet Reuben Wilson. Went to Pershing High School back in the 60s, and he is going to share a poem with us. I have prearranged for him to call in. So, Reuben, let's hear that wonderful poem of yours.
Okay, Coach. Thank you for this opportunity. It's called Fly.
Fly moving
Moving
around the
room.
Yeah.
Felt the presence and pride and prejudice. There was a smell of superfluity, of superiority. You could see the clouds of classism rise as high as redwoods. You could feel the ridicule and rejection of racism. While gliding, they admitted airs of aristocracy. My blackness stood out like a fly in buttermilk, giving a bitter taste to those bourgeois. They, the architects that assassinated Black is Beautiful. Will these quads, quins, and ox ever realize the one-drop rule is still in effect? That's it, Coach.
Well, at the end of it, though, you said the result of the above is the sellouts, Sambos, Stevens, and traitors. And I was going to ask you, I know what quads and octs are. You know, that's quadroons and octoroons. What are quins?
Well, it's just another measurement.
Okay.
You know, another measurement. You know, I think in Louisiana and some other places it was like the 1/32nd. You know, if you had 1/32nd drop of blood,
I got you.
You were still considered black.
1/32.
What are quins? Quins is like 5 or
French
5th.
slavery
You know,
versus
so it's just another measurement.
Hey, Reuben, what are Stevens?
Stephen is the term from the movie with Jimmy Fox, 2012 Christmas Day, Django, where
oh yeah, I love that
Sam
movie.
Jackson plays this character called Stephen.
Oh,
and he is so devoted to Leonardo DiCaprio, who plays the slave owner.
Yeah,
and
they
whatnot.
were DiCaprio and they were great.
His
in that
character
movie.
is so so characteristic of a traitor. You know, a person who would, you know, who just turned over completely, a traitor. You know. So he really more epitomizes a traitor than the misconception of an Uncle Tom, you know. So instead of saying someone's Uncle Tom, who is Josiah Henson, who is really misunderstood, I'm reusing the term Stephen because Sam Jackson's character in Django, Stephen, really epitomizes, you know, what the downfall of black people could be.
I got it. And listeners and watchers, you've been hearing the great social activist and poet Reuben Wilson reading his poem "Fly Moving Around the Room," and I love parts of this poem like a fly in buttermilk. You know, what a great simile. I mean, I love that. You've got
well, that was an old term referring to people who were black that stood out, you know, like flying buttermilk. You don't see buttermilk that much, but as a child, you know, we had buttermilk this, buttermilk that, buttermilk. And so a fly, you know, is dark in pigment or color, and, you know, buttermilk is like white and creamy. And so if a fly landed in the buttermilk, it was easily detected, you know.
And they are the architects. They are the architects that assassinated Black is Beautiful. I mean, I just love the phrases that you've got in that poem, Reuben. Keep writing, my brother, and thanks for calling in.
Thank you, you know, so much. You know, you are a great encouragement. You know, a very great encouragement. I really appreciate that.
I
really
thought
appreciate that.
I'm sorry. I thought the original ending
Thank you
was
for all
quite
that you
jarring.
do.
I thought the original ending for the poem was quite jarring the way you presented
Hello?
it. Hi, yes. I thought the
This
original
is Sunanda Corrado talking to you, Reuben.
Yes, was quite
Oh,
jarring.
I can hardly hear her. Okay.
Yes, when you ended the poem with just those two words, one drop. Because isn't that what all of this hell is
Speak
about?
into the mic, Sunanda. He
Yeah.
can't hear you.
It's as superficial as one drop, right? It really is. All that hell.
Okay, is she asking me a question?
Oh no, I said I like the way you ended it. When you were on air with us, with the line that ended with one drop.
With the I can't hear.
Oh,
You
that's
got to
okay.
speak into the mic, honey. You
No,
gotta
I-
speak into the
I
mic.
just think
Anyway, Ruben, thank you for calling in. Thank you for that wonderful poem. Keep writing and keep activating your activism, my brother.
Well, thank you, Coach. You've been an inspiration. You've been a real inspiration. Thank you. Okay, have a great day and great shows.
You too,
Thank
Ruben.
you.
Anyway,
Okay, bye-bye.
bye. Back to Heather Dell and Sunanda Corrado. We are talking today about the symposium that is going to be held later today at the Detroit Yacht Club on parochiade. And this symposium, in my view, is going to be a real barn burner.
well, we got to start thinking about these laws changing and these laws changing fast. And that's why the chamber is sponsoring it. How are we having these vast changes in laws with absolutely no public discourse? We got to start talking about it. Doesn't matter what side you're on. We got to start speaking across the table to each other to understand what's happening.
It's interesting how education and housing, which are
Yes.
the linchpin of a society, to me,
Yes.
not that what I think matters so much, but
I totally agree.
you know, it's so funny how those two things fly under the radar so much.
Yes.
Even our own 36th District Court that does some incredible work and has some incredible people that I admire very much. There are things that kind of just slide through, and the National Association and Michigan Association of Realtors don't stay on top of it. So yeah, I'm not sending them my $35 a month anymore because they're not really doing a great job. But
You're
it's
a realtor, are
yeah,
you?
it's amazing how those two things that people are like, oh, I didn't hear that, I didn't know that. Well, I guess it's also a matter of money, right? So if you're not looking for a place to live or a building to buy, or you don't have a kid in school, it's not relevant. So until everybody that's watching has a vested interest in it and they can come up with an advertising demographic, it doesn't matter. So once again, I don't know. Housing is dismissed as something not nearly as important as it is, and education is dismissed as either a right or a privilege. Nothing in between.
I'm a lifelong educator, and even though I'm semi-retired now, I'm just doing poetry readings, and I'm not superintendent anymore of any school district. I did not know about the Supreme Court decision until Dr. Sunanda Samadar Corrado informed me of it and said, John, I think that you ought to get a space over at the Detroit Yacht Club and put on a seminar on parochiade because no one else is doing it.
You know what? Actually, I kept talking about the idea, and you said you were going to get a space and put it on.
Did I?
Yes, that's exactly how
however,
it happened.
However that happened, I did get a space, and we
Yes.
are putting it on at 5:30 today.
I'm so grateful because we have seen absolutely no discussion about it. I've talked to state board educators, county board educators.
They don't know. They don't know about it.
And
So many of them do not know.
parochial schools are about to become public schools. That is what this forum is about. Whether you're for it or against it, the forum is about parochial schools becoming public schools through this filigree of Supreme Court decisions that have been coming down for the last 6 to 8 months, including labor laws.
But go back 50 years.
And then we're getting into real estate laws.
Well, I mean, the Supreme Court decisions in parochiate go back
200 years.
Okay, I sit corrected.
No, you're right.
But looking at SCOTUS, it's like...
No, you're completely accurate, because 50 years ago was when the Proposal C happened, and that was in the 1970s. And so the very same activists who've been fighting to keep our public schools open were the same activists that were fighting to keep parochial schools open. And so Proposal C was asking for funding for parochial schools in secular instructional bases or building maintenance forever, and it was struck down. So we lost over 100 parochial schools in Detroit. And that was a tipping point for Detroit, because we talk about redlining, but like you said, they don't look at the transections. At that time, it was majority white with the majority black population in the Detroit public schools. As Catholic schools started closing down, in the 1980s,
Mm-hmm.
we became a majority black city.
Mm-hmm.
So that is like a direct relationship to me, because a lot of communities, even with redlining, simply didn't want to move out. Families were living in compounds. They were living right next to each other. They had a history there. Why would they have to leave? It was when you take people's education, and especially ethnic communities, they tend to be very, we don't talk about that enough, right? Because we talk about America being a land of immigrants, but we don't talk about immigrants themselves being separatists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, however, whoever decided that we were going to do this at the yacht club, you or me, I can't remember that.
You offered up the yacht club. You've been a
but-
lifelong member.
But you were the
Yeah.
one. You were the one that set me on this course.
2 years.
And
John, you're the only one who listened. Nobody else was listening to me about this. Heather and I have been talking about it. Dr. Watkins was talking about it. But nobody wanted to put out a platform. It was just too risky.
well, a lot of
It was
people
too
are
risky.
going to be listening about it now. Let me tell you, once we get this thing going, because
People thought I was funny saying that we were going to have parochial schools as public schools. They thought I was being funny.
yeah.
But this comes from my research under the direction of Dr. Peter Hammer. I was working with Dr. Blackmer on this timeline, and my part was the education timeline. And I found parochiate has a 200-year history that has nothing to do with Democrats or Republicans.
Yeah, well, now it's got everything to do with Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and it's got a lot to do with the children, the school children in Detroit, because this is going to be taking money away from public education in Detroit's blackest and poorest city, and that's something that I am totally opposed to.
But this is on a national order.
Yeah, it's on a national
It's
order.
a national order.
It's the Trumpist Supreme Court
Yeah.
that has done this, and this is why, in my opinion, President Biden better get cracking and get 2 more Supreme Court members on there to
But there's
reverse
also
this.
another way of looking at this, and
Well,
we were talking about this before. There's a turn in population. The majority of America is going to be minority, and in that sense, the majority of minority populations tend to be faith-based.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't a black-white spectrum anymore, folks. There are going to be Jewish temples, there are going to be Hindu temples, there are going to be mosques, there are going to be all types of faith-based organizations that are going to get this money. And the question is, do we want to be last in line again?
No, we don't want to be last in line, but we have to remember too that the concept of separation of church and state is being overlooked here. And let me say this.
But education isn't state necessarily.
Exactly.
But
It's a privilege.
remember
And First
though,
Amendment
Education's a
protected.
privilege.
remember
Literacy K said that.
always remember what happened in Imperial Rome. You know, Jews versus
Remember MLK and Malcolm X. Muslims and Christians. They no verses here. They made us America today.
remember 17th century France.
Remember Gandhi.
Huguenots, well, Gandhi, true, but
Remember Jesus.
uh,
Remember Moses.
Huguenots versus Christians in 17th
Freedom
century
versus
France.
slavery.
Bloody,
there's
bloody.
No,
versus
and there's
slavery.
there's definitely validity in historic precedent, because I often look back at like the
Present precedent.
Well, but the
Ireland. Look
history
at
of
Ireland.
democracy
Look at
and
what's happened in
everything else, but
Ireland.
at a
And
certain
it's still
point,
happening.
At a certain point, we can't.
Catholic
we
versus
are where we
Protestants.
are. So pontificating on what has happened and trying to translate it into contemporary terms is just exhausting and counterproductive. I feel like, and again, it doesn't matter what I think, but
No, it
I
does
hear
matter
these
what you
arguments
think.
all the time, and people are exhausted. So I guess one of the questions is, if you have a failing school system, may I?
Yeah.
By all
But
means.
if you have a failing school system for whatever reason, you can
we do have
you
one.
can point
and
fingers,
I'll tell you
right?
the reasons.
It doesn't matter though, right? It
Yeah.
does matter, but it doesn't. And
Baseline.
this is the exhausting argument in housing too. Well, this and well, it's like, you know what? Stop blame storming. This is where we are.
Yeah.
So now we have a failed school system.
Yeah.
Whether it's because of corruption or money laundering or bad parenting or whatever, you call it whatever you want, right? It doesn't matter. Here we are.
Yes.
So
Okay.
we have this. This is the hand that we're currently dealt.
That's
So
true.
we have choices, right? We can ignore it and let it continue and spin out and watch our graduation rates and our literacy rates continue to
About
fall.
20%.
And that's not just the
Lit-
cities.
literacy
That's a
rate,
lot of
bottom
rural.
of the
That's
country.
a lot of
A
rural.
lot of
A
rural,
lot of
and
rural
that's
area.
really important. Okay.
Say that again.
A lot of rural areas.
Yes,
are
true,
affected
true.
too.
Yes.
Okay, so in the state of Michigan, we have a lot of rural areas that are influenced heavily by limited sources of information, because despite being in this time of technology, there are areas 100 miles from here that only have access to one small cable provider, right?
So we're talking about poverty, not just
We're
house
talking
in the
about
countryside.
abject poverty,
Yeah.
right? So in that sense, so here
If
we
you're
have.
poor in America, where can you go to make money?
So we're in this place. So the idea of quote unquote tampering with, and I don't remember which Supreme Court judge used that. I paraphrase. I don't remember which one, but the idea of the constitutionality of religious schools, separation of church and state, First Amendment rights is. I understand it's unconscionable on some levels, of course, depending on your interpretation of the Constitution, right?
Right.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the Constitution's kind of bullshit because when it was written, I didn't count.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wasn't a person.
I wasn't a contractor.
I wasn't a person.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't allowed to vote. So from
because
you can talk about
female,
the you can talk about the
The
Huguenots
social
and all that.
contract is a cute idea, right?
Right, it's
It's
adorable.
based on naturalist law.
The Constitution has
exist.
evolved, though. It has
Well, and
evolved.
we've had
Through Supreme Court decisions, and it's evolved here now.
We just
which
want to
have-
make sure that it doesn't evolve further in the wrong direction rather than in the right direction.
But what constitutes wrong and right?
Right.
So
We
if you
checks
have
and
a failing
balances.
school system and your kids, like I deal with people all the time, they're like I can't, particularly in the wake of COVID with the online learning. I mean, we had Birmingham schools, which are the public schools in Birmingham, which is a very, very affluent suburb of Detroit. If you don't know, in Oakland County, their public education has been compared to private school levels. I mean, they get the property taxes are exorbitant. They're getting, $100,000 a year per kid, that kind of stuff. They struggled with it. So I feel like this was a real, we went off the cliff, just like the buffalo, man. We just went off the cliff after COVID. So if we have no school system, does it make sense to focus on a level of triage to stop the bleeding? And even though, I personally I'm a huge, I believe in separation of church and state very much. Everyone's different. But if we look at the demographic that's starting to suffer, right? You have the rural white population, which
Right.
tend to be religious.
And
Okay.
totally underserved educationally
Baptist,
by public education.
charismatic, whatever. Okay. Then you have the urban. You have a lot of immigrants or migrants or generational, bringing generational ideas of history that my parents are second generation, and so by the time it waters down to
That's
me,
the CRT crisis.
yeah.
I'm
So,
first generation.
if
My
we-
father was born in another country,
If
Scotland.
we don't do something, we're complicit
Yes.
in the complete failure. So does it make sense, just like we've made amendments to the Constitution and we've looked at these different things as times has changed, doesn't it make sense to go where the opportunity lies?
And here's the other problem. We've made the failure of education into almost an entirely black issue.
It's
either
not.
black or rural, but
It's
Farmington
not.
Hills lost a high school. Bloomfield Hills lost a high school.
Royal Oak lost a high
Royal
school.
Oak lost a high school.
And
Detroit
forget
has
about-
lost several high schools.
Yeah.
Forget
Grosse
about
Pointe lost
Livingston
3
County, Owasso
Yeah.
County, Genesee County.
I mean, booster clubs aren't enough. Grosse Pointe South has a
Speak into the mic.
Grosse Pointe South has a mother's club that raises $250,000 a year just to upkeep that school. So it's a human capital within the neighborhoods that are perpetuating the schools. Our public schools have already been privatized by other means.
Correct.
Yeah.
Incidentally,
and
we
so,
need a commercial.
Oh, and you
And-
are watching the John Telford Detroit Show, coming to you live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Please like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe to us and other programming. And thank you for watching Wjzz Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. This debate will be pursued on 10 different spider legs instead of 8 this evening at 5:30 at the Detroit Yacht Club. Dr. John Telford is inviting the entire public to come out and talk about this very crucial issue and what this could mean for our autonomy and our culture in this city.
And if you come to this symposium on parochial aid, go to the guard shack, say that you are going to the symposium, use my name, say the symposium that John Telford is hosting, and the guard will let you in. And don't worry about a dress code or anything either. And they'll tell you what floor that the symposium is on.
And then Heather Dell is not only a member of the Highland Park Chamber of Commerce, She won't let me tell too much of her bio, so I'll
I
just be very
I don't have. I mean, I'm not a
she's
doctor.
She's a
It doesn't
former
matter.
curator.
You're a prominent realtor.
She's homegrown Detroit. Okay, went to high school in Detroit.
Mumford High
went
School.
to New York, became a curator, came back. A lot in between that I don't think I'm allowed to say yet.
Oh,
We'll try to
I don't
unpeel
know
her
that
a
it's
little bit.
relevant.
But she's an international realtor. She's also been dealing with redlining and a lot of young families, urban Detroiters, dealing with housing and how to get around hurdles in the city.
And she holds a degree from Michigan State University.
Homegrown.
Homegrown.
Corn fed.
So Heather, on that note, I've got some questions that you wrote. How does parochial school education compare to a charter school in terms of affordability
And accessibility, I should have said.
and,
This is a
and
common
accessibility?
question. I think we all talk. I don't. I mean, you guys are in a different level with this and your understanding. So I think it might be helpful. It might be helpful to kind of backpedal a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the first thing I hear is, well, parochial schools, that's religious, and charter schools, that's private. And I'm just a regular person, and I'm a civil servant, and I need to send my kid to school, but the nearest public school is 9 miles away, and I can't get a bus. So if they do get rid of the public schools, then what are my options? So what is the actual difference? Because I think there's a lot of confusion even still with charter schools.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
maybe help us understand the nomenclature to start with.
Well, in the first place, the charter schools don't play by the same rules that the traditional public schools do.
80% of our charter schools here are corporate owned, which means they're owned by management companies. These are not pedagogical institutions, but institutions that are looking for a 2% profit.
It's like a sports team.
Right.
That's
So
right.
they rotate. If one doesn't work, then it's under new management, and then the building's under new management again. We've seen this in Highland Park. The last management school had about a 95% suspension rate, and so of course they're out. They're having a new charter school move in. Of course, Highland Park was where we had our first charter school, and now we have absolutely no public schools. So Devlin Jackson, who an amazing artist and woman, amazing activist, I think former Highland
And
Park
she is
City
going to be
Council
on the
member.
panel too.
She's going to be on the panel too, talking about Highland Park and trying to get a resurgence in education. But this isn't happening through this debt process. The question to ask in terms of public schools as a citizen is, how the hell do we get around this debt? And do we want to try to pay the debt before we educate our kids? Because isn't that what they want us to do?
Ironically, Highland Park has
a
a
debt.
school board without a school district.
Absolutely.
And I've invited one of the
Absolutely.
prominent members of that board, whom I have the utmost respect for, Teresa Kelly.
Yeah.
I don't know if she'll be at this symposium today or not, but I hope she will be.
Now you look at Hamtramck and you look at their school board, they don't have one PhD because they don't have one problem. Okay? They got their public schools, they're sending kids to U of M, they've got their parochial schools, whatever you want to call them, masjids or whatever, and they've also got charter schools.
For our listeners who may not understand, Highland Park and Hamtramck are part of Wayne County, but they're, I know Highland Park is autonomous. It's about 2.7 square miles, but when people talk about Detroit on a national and international platform, these communities or these cities within the cities are generally lumped in.
Yeah.
So when we say Highland Park within Wayne County or the confines of Wayne County, as we put contextually Detroit for people who don't know, it's actually a city that doesn't have a school. Of course, they didn't have a fire department either, or a police department, when this isn't terribly uncommon in southeast Michigan,
And
even Pontiac.
And then in the more elite suburban areas, instead of charter schools, they have something that's harder than public schools, which is AI.
Oh, yeah.
And those international schools where you can get your international baccalaureate. So it's like having a diploma around the world. It's a European diploma, basically.
Yeah, like American
Right.
University.
So you see that why don't we have these schools here for our talented folks? It's so easy to bring that stuff down here.
But who pays for it? Isn't that
Exactly.
always the big
No,
question?
that's the question.
And they're
Heather,
paying for outcomes, not possibility.
Heather, you have you've given me another question, and you just touched on it. Will having limited public school opportunity drive up the cost of parochial options for a parent or a caregiver?
In other words, I would argue that if the public school system is shot, then diverting funds to the parochial, which in fact do service specifically most of the people, like from a spiritual standpoint. I don't know, for lack of a better way to say it. So not only does the shoe fit for the areas that need it most. Okay, so fine, you shut these down. Now, how does that happen? How does that work for someone who doesn't identify with any particular religion or can't afford, who is paying taxes for public schools and then has to turn around and pay for education?
Exactly,
Dr. Telford and I were asking the same question even before parochial schools came into effect, because we're like, how do we prevent Detroit public schools just from becoming a Title I reservoir?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And one of the things is
stop
sports.
America from becoming a
one of the
Title
things is
I
sports.
reservoir.
One of the things is trades. One of the things is outreach to literacy. And one of the things is just focusing on our young teachers and their ability for camaraderie, to have a new curriculum that's grounded. There's so many ways that we can save the Detroit public schools if we're not trying to make them compete with other functions that are already there. They don't have sports programs.
No.
They don't have trades programs.
Wait a minute.
And
Detroit.
No. Some parochial schools
Okay,
do.
yeah,
But what I'm
clarify
saying
that,
is Detroit public schools can foster, because DPSCD is supposed to be a portfolio management system. So if you want to manage the schools, how do they intersect so that the students are maximizing on all their school choices here? Because if they want to push school choice, let DPS push maximization of school choice. Make sure our kids are literate. Let's get them to literacy counseling and not get them into a program for special ed.
That's what I was trying so hard to do when I was superintendent.
There's so many beautiful things DPS can do. We have specific functions no other school can do. We have outreach other schools don't. And if we maximize on those aspects, we can make the other schools stronger.
And I think Elena Harada is going to speak to that too on the panel. I wouldn't be one bit surprised.
We need our public schools.
Elena was one of the school board members that appointed me superintendent.
Yes.
And of course we got the whole thing turned around when Public Act 436 kicked in, and that good elected board was disempowered by the then emergency financial manager, who became emergency manager when 436 kicked in. And of course I got fired. But I'm sure Elena will be very interested in speaking to that. Yeah. But go ahead, Heather.
Well, I mean, I spent some time in academia. I mean, I understand how it's easy to get to the space that you are. But what happens when you have generational poverty and generational illiteracy, and the housing is so bad? Forget about having high-speed internet or a computer. Yeah. There's no infrastructure to get them someplace. So that's all fine and good, but I can't help but think that ultimately, and whether you hate our mayor or not or whatever,
I don't hate him. He's actually a friend.
I do think that I think that the direction that it's going is good, because until you stabilize everything, I mean, if people are hungry or cold or scared or don't know, I mean, I as an educated white woman, right, I'm like the most privileged of privileged, and I've lived paycheck to paycheck, and it wears on you. So if you have people with kids, and they can't feed them, or they can't get them somewhere like that, what you're talking about is actually a far removed esoteric level. So and it's important. I had a perfect world, but so I think starting out with getting the city or getting these rural areas back with stable housing and stable property taxes, and if that includes having to upend the education system, you can't have community and schools and real estate without education. It's one big circle, and unfortunately it all relies on the big banks. But I think I do think there's a light a little bit at the end of the tunnel, and it's not just a train. There are enough communities that are
a train heading right at.
Yeah,
us, right?
there are enough communities that are starting to get into decent housing and to get to that point where we can. I mean, 10 years ago, you couldn't even talk about this.
We can't talk about stabilizing education until we talk about stabilizing. You just taught me myself again. Thank you so much. We can't talk about stabilizing education unless people have stable. You're so right.
I mean,
Which came first, though, the chicken or the egg? Which came first?
Oh, shoot, the Great Migration.
Well, okay. Anyway, Heather, I'm going to ask you another one. Oh, no,
Station
commercial.
break.
Oh,
Commercial.
and you're watching the John Telford Detroit Show, coming to you live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Please like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe to us and other programming. And thank you for watching Wjzz Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. In the studio today with us, we have Heather Dell, international realtor. Also, she just blushes, doesn't she?
It just sounds so ridiculous.
Many
But
other,
you
many
are
other
one,
things.
you know?
And also a member of the Highland Park Chamber of Commerce. She's also a panelist in tonight's discussion on parochiate and how it affects regentrification versus autonomous redevelopment of our neighborhoods.
So, Heather, your third question that you sent us. How do we know that religion won't take precedent over general knowledge subjects in a parochial setting?
So, there's actually Reverend Keith Graham.
She's supposed to answer that question.
No. That was my question to you guys.
Oh,
So
to
you
us?
know what?
Okay.
It is so accidentally beautiful because I was talking to Reverend Keith Graham yesterday, and he said he actually wanted to set out what the parameters of a parochial education is. What is parochialism? What are the values versus actual religious instruction, right? And we see this a lot in small liberal arts colleges. We have Albion, Alma, Kalamazoo. I don't know if Kalamazoo's like that. Hope College, where they're Christian-based schools, but they
Hillsdale.
entertain Hillsdale. They entertain interfaith dialogue, right? They have students like me, Hindus and all, coming through. So I'm really wondering if that's how he's going to probably talk about it, or but I really don't know what he's going to say about what makes a parochial education separate than a secular education. But I know the Supreme Court said, like, when it comes to mathematics or building maintenance, that is considered secular aspects of parochial education. Now, I'll know also, and I don't know about Africa so much, but in large parts of Asia, people came up into the global economy through convent education, which is Catholic schools. So my mom was convent educated. Just about anybody who came from elite society in Bengal came from Catholic school because that was our access to English. So for us, it was always an amazing polycultural for us because it's a majority Hindu population in a Catholic school.
Gotcha.
Right? So the education was amazing. The education was amazing because we were talking about two different fields, right? And the nuns weren't necessarily trying to convert the students who were coming from the most elite Hindu families who were ruling India.
So it was
at the
more
time.
about ethical culture than specific to a religion or a...
And for most ethnic, if you want to say that, but I mean, and I say this in my anthropology class all the time, first there was the word, and then I say the word was, and no matter what religion they say, God. So consciousness comes from the word and reading. Reading has never been something that was given out freely. 99% of the world was not allowed to read 99% of our historical time. So it should not come to us as a surprise that they still don't want us to read. And reading started with honestly, with the Bible. People were memorizing scripture.
That is true.
Yeah, but they're not... well.
And I'm not saying that they're not ideological things, but at the same time, when kids don't read their own stories, oftentimes people tell them the Bible story and what it means. But if they don't read it for themselves,
well, I mean, we all know that
richness to scripture.
the history, whoever wins the war is the revisionist historian,
Yeah,
As
right?
long
got
as you
that
don't
right.
read anything else,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? As long as you only read that history, that stays the case.
Well, I'm still concerned that some way, somehow, until we can get this Supreme Court decision reversed by whatever means, we're going to have to find a way to accommodate ourselves to it as public educators. And I'm not quite sure how that can happen, but one way might be that we sponsor a school and then get the money for a public school under the auspices of that decision. That is not a good way to do things, in my view.
But it might be effective, and right now, effective is better than good to me.
Right.
Well, do we want corporately managed? I mean, this is how silly and ridiculous all of our reforms have become in Detroit, and it's really mismanagement that's putting us here in the first place. We have charter schools that don't work. Over 50% of the public school population is now in charter schools that are run by corporations.
But that's as
You know
somebody
what I mean?
somebody on the right would say, well, if no one else is going to step up, who else is going to do it? Bring in the private sector.
Indeed. And that's exactly the way it's happened. That's exactly the way it's unfolded. But we're not seeing that there are larger demographic changes and that this is beyond a black and white spectrum too. It's not just the Supreme Court that's going conservative, it's also Germany going conservative.
Yes,
it's
France.
also the Netherlands going conservative. It's Netherlands, okay. Whiteness is going conservative. It's like South Africa. The minority situation is trying to consolidate their power over long periods of time, and you can be very successful at consolidating that power over a large population.
I wonder if the history books will reflect, like, even 50 years from now, if this will be the era of replacement theory fear.
Ooh, that was beautiful.
No, but seriously, like, it's just so funny because
It is.
I'm very lucky because I don't have that fear, but I know it's very innate and it's part of the DNA.
In the late 1980s,
Well,
there was a Time magazine headline saying that America is going to lose its majority white population, and I'm reading it. I'm like, why should I be bugging out about this again?
And this
It's
matters
like,
because
it's alarming, but it's not alarming to me. I'm already here.
Right.
It's like, who are you talking to?
It's like equal rights in the workforce. with
Yeah, I'm
women.
like, I'm still not here.
Well, South
It's like,
Africa
I have a
has never.
subscription.
South Africa has never had a majority white population, but it's still
But they have white supremacy.
That's right. It's skewing right back in that
Right.
direction.
Majority isn't in control.
this country
Elites
is-
people are in control.
South America
unfortunately.
is
Small groups.
billionairized, if I can coin a
The whole
phrase.
world
It's,
is.
Yeah, well, we're billionairized here too. Somebody asked me to bring this up today. If you want to be a criminal in America, stealing billions of dollars is your best bet to go scot-free. You know, a wave of shoplifting crimes is attracting front page news, while the $15 billion
that.
stolen by corporations from workers receives no coverage at all, excepting on this little local show right here and on my show on WCHB.
But if you want a free market, if you want to live in a democratic republic, these are the things that you have to accept. You just do. It doesn't mean you have to like it, or it doesn't mean you have to agree with it in your personal morals or in ethically. So
it's not just about Lansing anymore. It's
No,
not just about
no,
Detroit.
it's not.
It's not just about Duggan. It's not just about Whitmer. It's not just about federal government.
no, it's not.
We're in a global world.
Yeah, but I also I don't think that smash and grab.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think it's helping.
No.
I don't think it's helping. So whether or not somebody legally steals corporate tax dollars or whatever, and I've worked with the 1% and the 1% of the 1%. And I've been in it. I'm not personally, but I've been in it. And say what you will, like this is the system that we're given. So don't exacerbate it with that kind of stuff, and then try to defend. When you try to defend it as something that's better than, you end up with the January 6th issue where they're comparing it to the Black Lives Matter movement, and everyone's dug in. And although we can all agree that
binary.
we all agree that that's just not even the same sport. Other people don't see it that way, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's their clarion call.
I just see this as another aspect of the threat to our democracy in toto. But, maybe I'm in the minority on that. Here's another question that you sent us, Heather.
We got a couple minutes.
2 minutes left.
Oh, we got 2 minutes left?
So, let's end with the question. But don't forget, 5:30, Yacht Club tonight, Dr. Don Telford is inviting you personally, the public, okay? And the Highland Park Chamber of Commerce is hosting a discussion on parochial aid, how parochial schools are starting to become public schools over time in U.S. Supreme Court decisions. Please join us. It's going to happen very soon for us in the city. It'll be good to know where to go.
Okay, the clergyman, Keith, I think will answer this question better than we could answer it anyway that I was going to ask.
It's almost like he was asking the same questions you were. Keith Graham.
Keith Graham, his name is. And since this is this is ostensibly a poetry program, which I never do my poems, but let me share a poem with one of my kids. One of my kids wrote, one of my students, a young man named Christopher Gould, who, by the way, is a very good football player too. And I always tried to teach my poetry students to write rhymed, well-scanned poetry. And Christopher wrote a good one. And of course, the stuff that my kids write is always kind of activistic. Me being an activist, and I kind of skew their politics as best I can. But what Christopher Gould wrote is this: on Election Day, President Trump was elected. This changed the U.S., so we felt unprotected. Trump's a mistake that is still uncorrected. That's my student, Christopher Gould. And of course, I have to also say, don't be a dummy who hesitated. Hasten to get yourself vaccinated. We need immunity in our community. And ladies and gentlemen, right now, present company accepted, we got stupidity in our community rather than immunity in our community, because people still aren't getting vaccinated out there and they're dying. And it's not just those stupid Trumpists that are doing it. You know, a lot of Detroiters are refusing to get vaccinated.
A lot of South African are dying because over 90% of the population isn't being vaccinated. So when we talk about getting 3-4 rounds here, but the rest of the world remaining unvaccinated, we're looking at 10, 12, 18 vaccinations, as long as we don't see our brothers and sisters deserving of the same medications.
Amen. Okay, the turd that hasn't flushed.
That's what I remember.
God yet hasn't pushed the lever on the traitor Trump forever. And when he does, it is to be hoped that the lever is that of the gas chamber. Now, I know that ain't going to happen, but at least let's see this sucker in prison. Come on.
Ain't gonna happen. Just let it go. Move on.
Oh no, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Okay, sure.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Well, here's another
marry
poem, Heather.
Mexican
Uncivil warfare. On this evil and
Or a
fatal
third
occasion.
communist.
Are we out of time?
I think we're out of time.
Well, he hasn't knocked on the door yet.
He has.
Not one communist, but two.
Did he knock on